20 plus combined years, and we've served over 2,000 plus burnt out clients, including multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs who are juggling it all and, you know, trying to have energy, productivity, and also be connected with what they're doing. So next slide.
Sorry about that. Okay.
So with functional medicine, when Hunter pulls up the next slide. Yep, awesome. Functional medicine is natural healing and holistic healing, but it combines sort of natural healing with scientific information. So I do a lot of lab testing. I won't go into all of these body systems, but really I'm testing and treating the brain, the hormones, the gut, the detox system. And I wanted to talk specifically about the brain today. So on the next slide, dopamine, a little bit about dopamine. So it's a brain chemical, and it's really important for having really good energy, mental clarity, productivity, and creativity. Now, I'm guessing most of you guys are still teachers. You kind of need all of that in your current profession, but also too, if you choose to, or you exit, or you move into creating your own business, you also need this. And when, we're high achieving professionals, dopamine gets burnt out really quickly because we're always on the go doing lots of stuff. And on the next slide, here are some really common things. When I'm sitting down with a client and they're presenting with a lot of these symptoms, I'm like, we need to test your brain. So dopamine deficiencies can show up as anxiety, depression, could even be just like mood imbalances. It might not necessarily be full-blown anxiety or depression. Can definitely cause fatigue, brain fog, and memory issues is a really big one. And some of these other ones are interesting. So addictions. So the more deficient you are in dopamine, the more addictive behaviors you start developing, whether that's repetitive thought patterns, drinking alcohol or wine, smoking cigarettes, or even having food addictions to things like chocolate. Restless legs and tremors. So dopamine deficiency is quite common in people with Parkinson's disease. So if you have a functional dopamine deficiency, it can actually show up as like if you put your hands up, if your hands are sort of tremoring, or if you're lying in bed at night and you can't get to sleep because your legs are very restless, that again can be a sign of a dopamine deficiency. Can affect your self-confidence, self-worth, which is really important to have when you're moving out on your own and building a business, and also just lack of joy. So I, after I finished my PhD, which was quite a few years ago now, but, usually I would have been like, let's go to Bali. That was pre-coronavirus, but I felt nothing. I was like, I've just completed this massive thing. And all I thought was, oh, that's nice. What can I do now? And so when you're dopamine deficient, you can just really lose joy in what what you love doing, and even with the people around you. Okay, next slide. So I think the next slide is some things that we can do to help improve it. Oh, here I am. Oh, Hunter, we had a bit of an issue with the slides. I think you're on mute.
Just slight technical issues driving them as well.
That's all good. That's all good. So test, don't guess. So that's the big thing. Although I reeled off all those symptoms, you really don't know if those symptoms are coming from low dopamine. Maybe it might be from your stress hormones being out of balance. Maybe it might be because you have a nasty pathogen in your gut. So from like my practice, I will always do functional lab testing to actually identify what's going on. And then on the next slide, so there's certain things that deplete dopamine. I've got about 2 minutes, so I'm just going to reel through this. Elizabeth might even be able to give you these slides as well later on, so you can remember this. Prolonged stress. As I mentioned, poor diet. So if you're not eating enough protein and your brain needs amino acids, can be an issue. Digestive issues, you might have the best diet, but if you've got a lot of digestive issues and you're not absorbing your food, then it might cause brain imbalances. Drug depletion and supplement depletion. So if you're taking things for a different brain chemical, it might actually drag down dopamine if it's the wrong type of thing that you're taking. Toxins can cause brain chemical issues, head trauma, concussions. You could be born with genetics where you're not producing enough dopamine and that needs support. And also addictive behavior. So addictive behavior can be a symptom of dopamine deficiency, but it can also lead to further dopamine deficiency, even like things like exercise, which is healthy, but people can become quite addicted to that and even deplete the dopamine even more. So some really just like, I guess, some takeaway things that you guys can do right now on the next slide are some healthy things that you can help to support dopamine naturally. So amino acids, tyrosine is really important, but again, I would test rather than playing around with medications and supplements. You want to know what's going on. Eating a healthy diet, repairing the gut, avoiding toxins, supporting your detox pathways because those toxins are going to affect your neurotransmitters, and doing like some restorative, still slowing down work like mindful exercises, meditation, breath work, mindset coaching. If you're always like stuck in your head, sleep is so important because that is when we repair. And also reducing screen time. So screen time can really significantly impact our brain chemicals as well. And if you wanted to learn a bit more on the next slide, there's some links to some different free courses or free web classes that I run. So if this is like all sounding a bit like you and you want to learn more, there's some links there to a mini course that we have. And also we run some regular ending burnout web classes.
Philly, I might share those afterwards. So maybe I can email the slides on the recording to the participants today, and that way they'll be able to get that information as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And just my little last slide, which is just a nice little inspirational. It's a beautiful day to go after your dreams. So you're all here because you want to learn something and potentially moving in a different direction in your life. And so even if you're feeling health-wise like you're not ready for that, there's things that you can do. And also if you're just like feeling fearful or anxious, then listen to these other two guys because they're going to have some awesome information for you about how wonderful and I wouldn't necessarily say easy, but achievable it is to start building your own business and living your own dream.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Philippa. That was fantastic and really inspiring. I'm really curious before, I know we're going to save questions till the end, but just one quick one from me. How do you test? Like you said, you need to test the gut.
Yes.
Stuff.
So for dopamine specifically, that is done via a urine test. It's amazing what you can find in your pee. Like you can see all sorts of stuff. I use different body specimens. So poo, wee, spit, and blood. And it basically looks at all the important areas that is needed for your body to function.
That sounds really gross.
I love it. My husband hates it. Like we go to a dinner party. What do you do? Oh, I look at poo and I talk about poo. And he's like, I'm eating and these people are eating. It's really gross.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's very inspiring. And I'll make sure everyone has that information if they want to find out more about what you do. Thank you.
Awesome.
Philippa. All right, Hunter, it's over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Elizabeth. And hello again, everyone. Thank you, Philippa. That was awesome. I'm a big fan of natural medicine, and that's how we handle our health. So it's really great to learn about what you do. So that's awesome. So let's talk about the 8 business rooms. And basically this presentation, my purpose is to help any of you that are on the call to understand what it's going to take to be a business owner, if you like. Not so much about the concept of a business, but more about you as an individual and as a business owner. And as a little bit of background to myself, I've worked with business owners for the past 20 years or so in my own business. I've worked in sales and marketing for about 35 years. And I'm really passionate about helping people who run businesses and also people who want to start businesses. So that's where I love helping others, and hopefully the data I share with you today will give you a bit of an insight into what it's like to run a business and what sort of skills you're gonna have. But before I get into that, the couple of things I wanted to say was that, first of all, my belief is that everyone has skills and value that they can share either as a freelancer or as a business owner. As opposed to being an employee, which many of you might have been as a teacher. And I also think that coming from a teaching profession, you're actually very well set up to understand that there are skills that you need to learn to do anything in life. So you're all about teaching others skills. And then, of course, you understand the learning process, and you understand the sort of process of going through learning something and then being able to actually apply it in real life. So everything that I talk about is very practical. I'm not going to give you any theory today. It's all based on our practical understanding of what we do in running businesses, what we do in working with our clients, and what we've learnt from talking with lots and lots of business owners. So, this next slide, I suppose, is just a quick point that really this is about for you to invest in yourself. It's really important, if you're going to go out into your own business, that you spend some time investing in your knowledge and your skills and your ability to apply those skills, because that will come back to you in tenfold, saving you time and effort. So whether that's learning from experts or doing courses or reaching out to friends that are business owners, really invest in your own skills, because you're really the driver in running a business. Most of us will run relatively small businesses, so we're kind of in charge. We're the ones responsible, and if we don't do it, no one's going to do it. So just a little bit more about me. This is some of the books I've written. I'm up to about 8 or 9 books. The last 2 are just about to come out. But specifically today, I'm going to talk to you about some information from a book called Generation Experience. Now, this was originally written for mature age people going into business. However, the data in the book is applicable to anyone who wants to start a business, because it's based on surveys of 10,000 business owners. So we went out to, if you think about starting a business as an analogy of going out on a bushwalk, what I did is I ran up the path a few Ks and I spoke to some people who were already on the walk, got their information from them on what challenges they were having, and I came back to tell you. So we're really learning from people who have already started a business and are already running businesses and what challenges they've run into. And to put in context, a survey of 10,000 people, on election night, if you hear information about who's going to vote for whom in an election, the Gallup poll, which you might have heard that term, that's usually a sample of about 1,000 people. So this is 10 times the size of that. What it gives to me is an absolute certainty that the 8 rooms I'm going to talk about are the 8 rooms or the 8 skills that you need in running a business. Of course, I've spoken to so many people that have told me that it is the truth, if you like, because it's come from the mouths of people that are running businesses. So what are those 8 rooms? These are the titles for them, and I'm going to go through each of those 8 rooms in order. But just listing through them, they are a room on strategy and leadership. There's a room on marketing. There's a room on sales. There's a room for money. There's a room for quality, a room for people, a room for client service, and a room for a term which we call adapting and disruption. And I'll get back to that a little bit later. Each of these rooms is very important, and why I call them rooms is just as a bit of an analogy for you to think about. They're not physical rooms, they're virtual rooms, but the idea that you have to spend time in each of these 8 rooms in order to be successful as a business owner. If you don't spend time in one of these rooms, it will come back to bite you. And in the surveys of those 10,000 businesses, these are the 8 key areas of challenges that businesses told us about. So it's not my opinion, again, it's the stats from the 10,000 business owners that we surveyed over the last decade or so. The other thing I'll say is, because I've been running this survey for a decade, the rooms haven't changed. So that also gives me some confidence that they are the rooms that you need to sort of focus your attention on as well. So why do we know? Well, I've talked about the idea we've got 10,000 surveys, but also in our team, we have collectively about 100 years experience in running businesses. So we've also experienced these in our own business and running them. I've also, on top of those surveys, I've spoken to individually 300 business owners about the challenges of running a business and what they run into. And in the last 20 years, we've serviced more than 500 clients in our own business. So we've applied, I don't write these books for the fun of it. I write it because I want to share the data that we apply in our own business every day. So I have sitting to the left of me my own business plan with the 8 business rooms, and I'm applying that in my own business every day to success. So, so that's where it comes from. So let's get into the rooms a little bit and talk about the first one. I talk about the strategy room as kind of the control room. It's kind of the place, it's actually the room you start in when you're starting to think about a business. So if any of you have got a business idea that you're considering, or you're searching for an idea that you want to start your own business, this is the room you do that planning. And it's really, really important to think deeply about your business idea before you go and start spending money on business names or logos or websites or domain names or structuring a corporation or whatever you're going to, or talking to your accountant. You shouldn't do any of that until you've actually explored whether that idea that you've got is viable. And even if people are running businesses, we will bring them back to this room if they're having some trouble in their business, and we'll start looking at, well, what is this business for? What's its purpose? Who is it targeting? Which customers are you trying to sell your products and services to? How big is the market? Where are you going to operate from? Are you working from home, or are you going to have a shop, or are you going to go to other people's locations to deliver your service? And this idea of planning your business is really important. It's also a big issue for businesses in those surveys. A lot of businesses don't have a good strategic plan for their business, which is why you hear horror stories of 50% of businesses failing within 5 years of starting. So my intention and my passion is to make sure that if you follow these steps, you're going to be more likely to be successful. And in the strategy room, it's all about setting and achieving your goals for your business. It's about planning out your strategy for how you're going to develop your product and service, how you're going to engage with customers. And then it's all about the daily, weekly, monthly tasks that you have towards an overall plan. So just to give you an example, and I don't have it right here with me, but I have, on a daily basis, I have a battle plan that I'm using every single day, and this battle plan is aligned to my overall strategy. So you might have heard that the old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. I think it was Confucius, I'm not absolutely sure. But anyway, the idea that it might seem like a big deal to start a business. It might seem incredibly difficult to think about moving from being an employee to starting a business. But if you break that big goal down into smaller and smaller steps, you'll get to a point where each of those steps is easy. And each of those steps contributes to your overall goal of being successful in your business. And that's the way you can be successful in business, is to put in place a strategic plan. The leadership bit is that when you become a business owner, you become a leader by default, because you're running your own show. Even if you're on your own, you're still going to have other people that you need to inspire to come with you on the journey, whether that's your accountant or your bank manager or your partner. Tilly works with her husband, Chris. She'll know about this old idea of when you're running a business and you've got a partner, you've both got to be on the same journey. It might be some suppliers to your business. If you're doing products, you might have suppliers, and you've got to inspire them to be good suppliers to your business. So you become a leader. And each of you as a teacher, you've led classes and you've led departments in the past. So I'm sure you're familiar with this idea of it, but leadership definitely is a key skill of being a business owner. The next room is marketing, and PR is short for public relations. They're both part of the same puzzle. Marketing is kind of talking about yourself to your customers, and PR is getting other people to talk about you. Now, I don't mean that means you're on Channel 9 News having someone talk about your business. It might be just somebody who's dealt with you goes and tells other people about it. Word of mouth is public relations. In this room, what you're trying to do in your business is understand who your customers are, what they need and want, who are your competitors, what's the marketplace you're operating in? Are you operating in a local suburb, in a strip shopping mall? Are you like Philly running a national virtual medical practice? So she has a scope of where she's running her business. It's about having a plan for your marketing. And that's not which Facebook post I'm going to run this week, or what brochure am I going to have, or which business card. It's who are my customers and how am I going to communicate to them in such a way that they then want to buy my product and service. And marketing is all about understanding what customers need and want, and then communicating in a way that sort of pushes the buttons, if you like. If they need something, then you should be talking about the way you satisfy that need all the time. And the only way you can do that is if you speak to lots of customers. To give you an idea, when I wrote the book Generation Experience, I did 2,000 hours of research and surveys with customers. That might seem kind of crazy, but I was looking for quite a significant piece of information that I needed to do to help those customers. So it is an important thing to sort of spend some time understanding needs and wants. You don't have to do 2,000 surveys, but you do need to do some. You don't want to make assumptions about what people think, what you think people need and want. Businesses that do that tend to go out of business pretty quickly. But if you understand what people need and want, and you have the skills and ability or the product and service that satisfies that need, then you can be successful or on the road to success. There's also a sales room. The difference between marketing and sales, just very quickly, marketing is really about talking to a group of customers that have similar needs and wants. So we often talk about them as a niche or a particular audience. When you do marketing, so if you run some Facebook ads or some Google ads, or even if you did letterbox drops in your local area promoting a lawn mowing service, you might then get people calling to talk about your product and service. And at the moment you start talking to people one-on-one, that's a sales conversation, not a marketing conversation. If you're making coffee at a cafe, that sales conversation could be very quick. Somebody walks in and says, "Oh, I'd like a cup of coffee," and you go, "Great, what would you like?" "Latte, cool, it's $4, make the latte," and they go. For some businesses, it might be a longer term process where you're talking with someone for a few weeks before they buy your service or your product. But sales is a different skill to marketing. Marketing is about understanding a group of people and communicating a broad message. Sales is about convincing one person to then go from an interested prospect to paying some money for your product and service. And I'm not going to go into the detail of the steps there, but it's something that you need to think about as a skill if you want to be a good business owner. If you can't sell what you have as a product or a service, then no one will be able to. So it's important to learn that skill. It'd be no surprise to anyone that money is a big issue for business owners. In fact, it's probably one of the most common problems that business owners tell me when we're working with them, that they have problems with cash flow, or they don't have enough money to do what they would need to do, et cetera, et cetera. There's basically three areas of money that you need to know about. One is, how do you manage income, which is related to how much you price your products and services at, but also the timing of when you do your invoices. We had a friend of mine recently who had taken on a client, and this client was a manufacturing business, and he basically bent steel into different shapes for clients, took raw steel, bent it into shapes and sent it out. He had $2 million worth of invoices that he hadn't sent out, and yet he was scratching around for money. So the simple solution was just get the invoices out, and he was able to do that and collected, because some of them were too old, he lost that money, but I think he collected 1.7 million of the $2 million. So he went from having no money to having all of this money, and he was able to buy a new factory and expand and put in place systems to get his invoices out. But it just was a weakness in his business. He kept forgetting to do invoices. He was bending steel and sending it out and not invoicing for it, which was, it might seem crazy, but that's the sort of problems that some business owners will get into. Also about managing expenses. Elizabeth, before we got on the call today, we were talking about the cost of software as a service, having Xero and having your Adobe design programs and maybe a customer relationship management system or an accounting system or whatever. Every business has expenses. One of the things you'll notice going from an employee where you get, say, a pay once a month, and that all of that pay is yours because whoever your employee has paid the tax and paid the super. When you run a business, when the money comes in, it's not all yours. Some of it has to go to the government, some of it has to go to expenses, and then after you take those things away, then what's left will be yours. But you'll also then have to set aside your own tax and other things. So you have to become really good at understanding the flow of money in your business when you run a business. To give you an idea, 40% of business owners select this as their number one issue whenever we did the survey. So out of those 10,000, 4,000 people had said the number one issue was money. So that gives you an idea of its importance. Quality is another room which is important. Now, whilst I have a fancy Tiffany badge on a Louis Vuitton bag here, I'm not talking about the fact that you necessarily have to be at the level of Tiffany's in whatever product or service you do. A handbag is a handbag. So you could have a handbag worth $20, it still holds the goods that somebody wants to carry around in the handbag. If you think about two other French brands, Montblanc and Bic, Montblanc is a $500 pen and Bic is a $1 pen, but they both write. So quality is more about what standard you want and what standard the customer wants in exchange for the money, and then making sure you keep delivering your service at that standard. If I was to use another analogy, if you were mowing lawns and the customer expected you'd mow the lawn and then gather up all of the cuttings and take them away, but you just blew them onto the next door neighbour's driveway, well, then you might get a few unhappy customers and a few unhappy neighbours. And I think we've probably all seen that at some point in our lives, walking around and doing our exercise, somebody blowing the leaves off to the next door neighbour. Quality is just about what have you promised and what have you delivered to the customer. Interestingly enough, whilst cash flow and money is one of the biggest challenges that business owners say, quality is one of the reasons businesses go out of business, because customers will walk away from a business that doesn't deliver on its promises, whatever that promise is. As long as they've got what they expected or a little bit more than they expected, they'll be happy. But if you continually fail to deliver what you've promised, then you will have troubles running your business, which is why it became one of the 8 rooms. The people room, I'm not going to go into this in great detail because many of you will probably start a business with yourself or a small team, but you will have to manage people. And really the key thing here is that whoever you're working with, whether it's your accountant or your supplier or a staff member or even yourself, is you just need to let them know what their job is and let them know how they're going. Aside from legislative stuff of hiring and firing people and all those other sorts of things that you should know, the most important thing is just a human respect for, if somebody's on the journey with you, that they understand what their job is and that you keep them informed of how they're going. And if they're failing to achieve what they need to in the role, that you give them some help and some training and some support. And okay, at some point, maybe they're not the right person for the job, they can't do it, so you'll have to fire them or get somebody else to do the job or whatever. As a very practical example of this, with my accountant, I give them a job description. I tell them exactly what I want from them rather than the other way around, because I'm engaging them and paying them. I'll say, these are the reports I need, this is when I need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's great because they understand what I need. And then it's no surprise to them if they don't deliver that I'm going to get on the phone and say, hey, we agreed this, this, and this. Can we get back to doing that if they haven't delivered it? So I just try and I keep it very simple, but I try and do that with everyone that I'm working with, suppliers, staff, or otherwise. Client service is another key thing. It's a little bit part of the quality issue, but it's a separate room because service is kind of separate to quality. It's the idea of one human delivering some kind of service to another human, whether that's delivering a product, whether it's, in this case, bringing some food out to a table, whether it's teaching someone a new skill. This is more the human-to-human connection as opposed to quality, which is related to the product or service itself. But again, businesses that deliver on their promises in regards to service, they deliver on time, they deliver what was expected, they fix things when they don't go right, are businesses which are successful. So if you've got an idea of starting a business, tutoring somebody, or whatever you're going to do, you just got to make sure you continue to deliver what you promise, and keep an eye on that, and check with customers if they feel like you've delivered what you said you were going to deliver. Which brings me to the last room. And whilst all of them are important, in the world we live in today, this is one of the most important rooms. And that is that when you start your business, in all likelihood, within a year or two of you starting your business, there's going to be changes in technology, there'll be changes in demand, there'll be changes in the needs and wants of customers, there'll be changes in new competition coming into the market. And it doesn't matter whether you're operating at a local level in one suburb or you're operating on a national basis or a global basis, things change. We're in a world of change. None of us have to talk about all the rubbish and crap we've been going through for the last 18 months. But we know that things change. So when you start your business, I want you to keep this analogy in mind, and it's an old sailor's term, and it's called the weather eye. And if anyone on the call has been a sailor, you know you keep your eye on the horizon. And if you see a storm coming, you're pulling the sails down, you're tacking away from it, you're getting into safe harbour, you're definitely doing something. You're not just going to sail on or with all your sails up straight into the storm. And in business, you can do the same thing. You can keep an eye on the local scene. What's changing? Is there a new shop opened up that competes with you, or is a new piece of technology come out where you can deliver some of your things that you were doing in person online, or whatever? There's going to be changes. So it's really important to be kind of adaptable as a business owner, to not fix costs or activities into things that you can't change, that you lock yourself into. Even things like leases for buildings. If you were thinking of going and opening a shop, just be really careful of how long that lease is and what's the get out clause, and just make sure you've given yourself some flexibility in what you're planning to do in regards to your business model, or where you're going to operate from, or who you're dealing with, and keeping an eye on how things are changing. So that's it for the 8 rooms. I'm going to stop sharing the slides right now, but I do want to show you one more thing, and that is that if you are considering to start a business, there's 2 things I want to do. One is we do a benchmark and a report for clients, and I'd like to give that to everyone that's on the call today. So if you would like to do our benchmark of skills in business, please reach out to Elizabeth and ask her, and we'll send you a link to do that, and we'll send you a report that compares you to the other 500 or so people that have filled that benchmark in. And I would encourage you, as I did at the start of the presentation, to invest some time with Elizabeth. And she's put together a bit of a package which includes my book and course and some coaching with you. And she's got 12 places available for pretty much half price. So for just a bit under $400, you can get access to Elizabeth's time and really start thinking about your future plan and whether running a business is right for you, and also get some of the resources which go into a bit more detail than I could obviously spend time on today. But definitely would also then come back to my point that as teachers, I think you're very well prepared for the idea of starting a business or being a freelancer or working with customers with a product or a service, because you understand teaching, you understand learning, and you understand process, and it is doable as long as you realize that there are these 8 sort of sets of skills that you need in order to start out on the right foot, if you like. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hunter. And I'm just going to post in the chat now the links if people want to book if you do want to book into either of those. There are 2 coaching sessions. There's a Tuesday after or evening one or a Saturday morning one. That's Melbourne time. So that should just about cover most of the world if I do those times. So hopefully that suits people. I've got the links there. And that they're just up on Eventbrite. So even if you don't want to click into that right at the moment, if you go onto Eventbrite and just look up me, you'll find the links to those. You'll see those those courses that I'm going to be running using Hunter's material that he's very generously allowed me to use, and his course book and the book Generation Experience, which I've just got there in my background. I can't point the right way. Yeah, there. And there's a PDF copy of that included in that. So if you're interested in that, I think it's a great opportunity to really sit down and nut out what it looks like to go through each of those rooms. And I know my conversations with Hunter have been really inspiring and very helpful about just thinking about what are some of the different practices I can do in my own business that helps me to be more successful. So one great example was the conversation with the accountant, because I had this idea in my mind that the accountant was telling me what to do, but actually I'm employing him. And so I need to say to him, no, this is how often I want you to get back to me. And, you know, this is when I want to do my tax, not a year and a half after it's actually due, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've found those conversations really helpful. So I'm going to open up the floor now to Hunter and Philippa to answer any questions that anyone might have. If you oh, thank you. Justin's just said the event's not available. I will go and check on that in a second. That should have already been released, but maybe something glitched there. So thank you for letting me know. So Hunter and Philippa, I'm going to open up the floor to you guys. And how about if you want to ask a question, actually bring yourself off mute and say who you want to speak to. So yeah, let's go, folks. Ask some questions. If you're feeling a bit nervous, you can also put questions in the chat.
And neither of us bite, so please feel free.
I'll ask a question. I have a question. My question is for Hunter, and I am considering starting a nonprofit business having to do with environmental education. I was a science teacher up until this last year when I quit, and I worked with other organizations that came into my classroom and did kind of outreach education, and I'd really like to start that in my own community because there isn't one where I currently live. But the part that I'm kind of not sure where to start is money, because I'm not really selling a product. A lot of these organizations are kind of reliant on donations, but you kind of have to establish, you know, your presence before you can ask donations from people. So what do you do, like if you're more in the nonprofit side of things, especially when you're getting started financially? I don't want to pour all of my own money and my own financial security into something like this. So kind of what are those first steps?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So awesome. Well done. I've actually got a Bachelor of Science in botany, so good on you. I like spending a lot of my time in the outdoors. So so there's definitely ways you can start. The first thing I would probably look at in terms of funding a business like that is to see whether there's any local grants where you could get some support from, you know, local, state or regional government or even federal government grants for starting a not-for-profit, particularly in an area with environmental education, which is very topical at the moment. There's organisations that will support that. I would probably challenge the assumption you might not be able to get donations, because you might actually get some people that are interested in that locally who would be willing to invest a few $1,000s each to give you a bit of a starting point, like some social investors. In Australia, we have a company called Social Ventures, and they actually have investors that support not-for-profits and or profit for purpose businesses, which my business with mature age people is actually a profit for purpose. In other words, purpose is very central to what we do in terms of trying to help end ageism. So while we provide products and services, our purpose is related to ending ageism and helping mature age people. So I think you could definitely look at grants and maybe some small investment. You could also look at crowdfunding. So Kickstarter or Indiegogo, which is basically getting, you know, if you could get a few hundred people to put a couple $100s in each that like the environment, then you might get a bit of a kickstart on some funding on that as well. In terms of actually then the engagement of direct donations for delivering the education or the service, then I think that's a case of creating a pilot and getting your first cohort of kids through checking out how you're going to deliver it, what the results are, surveying the parents, surveying the organisations that you engage with, whether it's the local sports club or the local school, and then you start to generate. That becomes PR because you've put people through, you've got results, you can show a measurable, tangible outcome for the environment and for the kids that go through it, and then that can become something you could ask for donations for on that regard. So whatever that is, the donation for to come along to it. I'm not sure whether you're doing that as a short-term thing, or if it's a come and stay somewhere and do that like at a local bushland retreat like we've done in Australia. But yeah, that'd be where I'd start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks, Hunter. Philly, I've got a question for you, actually. You said that you're working in the sort of like nationwide, but you're taking body fluid samples. How do you actually do that? I'm just really curious about that.
I could run over and get a test. No, so I use, I don't actually analyze the test results in my clinic. So I'm using other third-party lab companies. They send the test kits to the client takes their specimen. It's all pretty easy to take, pee, poo, or spit in something, and then send it back to the labs, and then I get results. Yeah.
Right.
So it's pretty very, works just the same whether you're in person or via virtually.
Okay. Nice. Okay, thank you for that. Very. All right. So are there any other questions we've got for either Hunter or Philly before we wrap this up today?
There were some coming up in the chat box.
Yes, I saw there's one from Jewel that I can probably answer, which is tips and advice for scaling an already existing business. Absolutely. So if you've got an existing business and you've had some success in, whatever that is, so let's say there's a successful model that you want to scale, the key areas of scaling, if you like, one is scale on a geographical basis. And so my key tip for that is really whatever's been successful, if you want to scale geographically or have other people deliver it or get more people to deliver it, is to really make sure you write down what has been successful and chase that down to the, to the absolute nth degree. What did you do? What did you invest in? What was the result? What was the return? What people liked, what they disliked, and then write those up as job descriptions, templates, processes, programs, in much the same way you might do a teaching plan, in that you can then replicate. Because scale is all about duplication and replication. It doesn't really matter how you do that, whether you're getting more staff on board to deliver it, or whether you're getting other people to do it as a licensing thing, or to one-to-many programs, or whatever other business model you have. It's all about duplication of success. You might then end up with things like funding issues, such as the other question that we had, where you need to fund that expansion and that scale. So you might have to take it on a gradient approach of scaling it up. But it really comes down to proof of concept, which you've already got with your business, and then being able to scale that by duplication and replication.
Great. I've got some more messages coming up. There's one said, I've been doing some free coaching and writing online. I have some testimonials and I want to grow. What would I need to grow to the next stage? I think that's what they're asking there.
Yeah, cool. Okay. The first thing I would do with this, the testimonials is a fantastic start. The next thing you want to do in terms of taking it into a paid let's call it a side hustle for the moment, for the next 3 to 6 months, I would focus my energies on working out exactly who is your customer that you've been delivering to, and is going to be the customer that values it, and work out what the pricing or the value model is for that. So what is the product you're going to deliver? If it's a course or that you've done that you're going to deliver virtually, or you're going to do it one-on-one, and the pricing on those is going to be different. But then survey as many people who are your customers as possible. I'm not sure whether you're coaching kids or adults or not, but if it's the kids, then you're probably going to have to survey the parents because they're the payers of the service, and then use that survey to then generate your marketing and your communications for the program. And if you've got some time, which is great, you're going to continue working, you're going to do this as a side hustle, it's great. You can spend your time on understanding who that audience is and what they're willing to pay for what you've got as a service.
Yeah, great. And can I just add to that with that idea of the side hustle, that you really do need to work out who's the person who's actually paying you. I started out coaching year 11 and 12 students and discovered that, first of all, it was really hard to get them to show up. And second of all, I actually needed to convince their parents to pay me. And so the combination of having to convince lots of people to be involved in that process, I actually decided that wasn't the right niche for me. So I moved on from that. But yeah, it was good learning to realize that actually the client or the person you're serving and the actual client who pays you might be two different people.
Yeah, exactly. And in that case, the most important person to service or survey is the person who's paying, because they're the one that has the value equation. They still have a need. It's just a need. They have a need for their child to learn something, or to learn something better than they have in their current situation or whatever. But either way, they're the person you have to convince to purchase the service. Who you would promote to, even though you might be servicing a different person. But in Justin's case, he is coaching and teaching adults. So yeah, it's about finding out who is going to value it, because you've been doing it free for now. So what is the value of that? And do your maths on how many people you have to coach in order to make the money that you need to, and sort of work backwards from that. I always see marketing as a maths challenge first. So if you're charging $500 for something and you want to make $50,000 a year, then you know you have to deliver it to 100 people. So, sorry, excuse me. That should have been off. My apologies. Yeah. So surveying, absolutely first step in marketing and business is really understanding needs and wants of the customers and what they value.
Great. All right. If we don't have any more questions, we might let this wrap up.
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry, go, Katie.
I'm just wondering about what your advice would be about the wisdom or not of setting up different businesses. The situation that I'm in is we actually have land. We have 5 acres in an area where there's lots of possibilities of what we could do. Plus, I have a couple of different sets of skills that I could probably see using. They don't necessarily mesh, but I could probably develop a decent income out of doing maybe both of them as well. Is it too difficult? As someone, I've never run a business. I've always been an employee. But is it too difficult to set up like multiple businesses that do different things at once, or is it easier to start out with just one and see how you go? Like I said, they're both very different in terms of what product I'd be or service I'd be providing. So it's I'm just not sure. And I can also see one of the reasons I was drawn to teaching is because of the diversity that it offers. Sure. And I can see myself in just getting stuck in one business. I would get bored very quickly as well.
Yeah. I don't see any issue with having multiple ones. I run 2 businesses myself, and I have joint ventures in other things as well. So I'm, jumping between other things. It probably comes down to your interest and passion. If you're passionate about both of them, then just treat them both as a pilot and treat them separately, like they're like 2 children, one child, and look after them and do the surveys and understand the customers for that, and do the same for the other. And you might do those sequentially. You might try one for a month or 2 and get it rolling, and that might win the other one, or you can do them both together. But just keep them discrete. So in terms of time and energy, just make sure you just do the same process for each. Run through the 8 rooms for one and run through the 8 rooms for the other. But to keep it incredibly simple. The first thing you do is just go, who's my customer? Can I go and speak to 5 or 10 of them, talk about the concept, see what they think, get some sort of sense of whether people are willing to pay whatever it is for it, whether you're growing organic vegetables or, I don't know, running horse riding classes or whatever you're doing on your 5 acres. As long as you're passionate about it and you're interested, there's no barrier to having multiple things. In fact, it's not a bad risk strategy if you have 2 going, that if one doesn't go as well, then you've got another one to fall back on. So
quite a few people have suggested a still, but I think that's a bit too risky. But I think probably what we'd be looking at is plant propagation and sales, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's just about finding out who would buy that from you in your local area. Yeah.
Katie, so where are you located?
I am just outside of Lismore on the Northern Rivers.
Okay.
So we have the area that I live in. It's interesting in terms of work. A lot of people are small business owners.
Yes.
And there is a lot of potential for lots of different things in terms of either providing service type services, like personal services, or products as well. So it's for a long time I've thought that teaching is something I would do forever. And so the idea of stepping outside of that for me is it's a challenge, but I think it's something that we both recognise we need. My partner's a teacher as well. So yeah, it's we're kind of we have assets that we can utilise for income producing purposes, but we haven't really seen it like that since we've lived here. So it's I've been finding it really difficult to get good information about how people do that. But I think it's such a bespoke thing, depending on where you live and what you want to do, that's probably why it's hard to figure out how we would actually move to an idea to setting it up.
Yeah, if I can, I know Lismore well because I was actually up there in the Northern Rivers last year doing a speaking tour to all the local chambers of commerce. So I spoke at the Lismore Theatre and also at Casino and Kyogle. So I know the area well. Can I suggest you reach out to the Entrepreneurs Facilitation Service and speak to Natalie Brooks, because she actually uses our Silver and Wise program through Business Australia and the local chambers of commerce, and she's your local facilitator, and she can give you some free business advice. You get a few hours of free business advice to sort of just chat about your idea.
Fantastic. That sounds like a really good thing. Yeah, because it's like I said, it's hard to the things that I have that are in my mind is really low cost startup required, and some and others are very, very minimal costs as well. So in terms of capital investment, the risk is quite low. It's just the time, obviously.
Sure.
So
and if I'd suggest, just spend the time understanding customers, because you know in your area you've probably got government customers who could buy native plants for reforestation. You've got domestic customers who might buy something, and you might have food customers who might buy specific herbs and healing plants and things that they might use for food production. So you've got a few different markets that you could explore, and and a great place to grow it because you get great rain and good soil. So
yes, we sure do.
Thanks, Katie. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming today. It's been really great to see so many people join us on this call. I will be in touch with the recording for you, or a link to that. And if you have any further questions for me, actually, I'll just put my email address in the chat as well, if I can spell my own name. And I've also got those links to work now, which is a good thing. I just hadn't actually pressed send. I thought I had. But that's all fixed up now. So if you want to book in for either of those, there's 2 sessions on the Tuesday night or 2 sessions on the Saturday morning. So you kind of choose one or the other. And I'd love to have you join me and start working on a plan to set up your own business. Anything else that Hunter or Philippa want to say before we finish up?
Just good luck, have a crack, and take it step by step. That's the most important thing. Don't worry about the big thing. Just take each step one at a time, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thanks, Hunter and Philippa, for sharing your wisdom today.